Now, Sharia councils have been operating in Britain for the past 30 years, deciding on financial, family and custody issues for Muslims according to Sharia law, the set of religious principles drawn from the Quran. And since 2007, Sharia arbitration tribunals have been making decisions enforceable by the UK civil courts. Now a new bill has been introduced in the House of Lords by the crossbench peer Baroness Cox, aiming to limit what she says are its discriminatory practices. Under Sharia law, a woman's testimony can be given half the weight of a man's, and she has fewer property rights. Diana Nammi is the director and founder of the Iranian and Kurdish women's rights organisation. I asked her what the women who got in contact with her said were their concerns about Sharia councils.
They say that they are invisible in the court. They will not be heard by the judges. We had cases that she told judge that she was forced into the marriage and now she is seeking divorce. And judge simply told her that in Islam there is no forced marriage and whatever you are saying, your statement is not valid for us.
What about domestic violence? Do you have, Diana, any specific examples of a woman who's gone to a Sharia court because of domestic violence?
One of our clients, she was a Muslim woman herself and a muhajjaba woman, actually. Her husband was very, very violent. He raped her so many times, beat her up, even remarried, so she became a second wife, and she was quite young. When she sought divorce, it took 3 years for her to get divorced via Sharia court, and it was because they didn't accept that domestic violence is a base of divorce or rape even. They just simply say it's your duty as a wife to give pleasure to your husband whenever he needs it. I remember I asked her, what do you think about Sharia court? And she told me, Diana, my civil divorce took less than a year, but my Sharia divorce took 3 years, and it was a painful procedure for me. In another case we had, again, it was domestic violence very involved, and the husband tried to not give her a divorce. It took about 2 years for her. The day she went to the Sharia court, judge or imam asked her if she is in her period or not, and she told him that she is in period. He simply told her, you are not clean, go out of the court.
But is that common practice?
It is, because they believe a woman who is in her period, she is not clean, her body is not clean, she is not in a good mind to be there.
But there's no doubt, though, Diana, there is a demand for Sharia courts, isn't there? And in fact, that demand is largely from women.
Demand is not for Sharia court, actually. Demand from women is really civil law and the law of this country, because under the civil law, women has equal rights, whereas under the Sharia law, women has no rights. For example, custody for children is automatically going to the father. Divorce is not women's rights. Its husband can divorce a woman. Then inheritance, a woman can receive half of a man's inheritance. In terms of polygamy, a woman have to stay within a polygamy family where a man can marry 4 wives and millions of temporary wives, when a woman cannot even get divorce. There are lots of discrimination between men and women.
Diana, what would you say to somebody who said that they felt that this bill was anti-Islam?
I believe it's not an anti-Muslim bill. It is anti-discrimination. Under the civil law, every single Muslim, every single Jewish, every single Christian, people with different religion or no religion, they are entitled for the highest rights that every single people can be entitled to. Whereas under Sharia law, women has no equal rights.
Is it possible that some of the women who go to a Sharia court do not know that there is an alternative?
It is possible, yes, because I'm afraid that unfortunately many women within the family may not hear about civil law at all. Many of them, they have been kept at home either as a housewife or someone just to work at home or their own business. They don't know any of their rights and entitlement in the UK. We have cases that she has been here in the UK for nearly 5 years. She has got 2 children. She couldn't take a bus to come to our office, which we are not very far from her home.
She just didn't know?
She just didn't know. She told me that her husband didn't let her to go out for any shopping, to answer the phone, and she was an educated woman.
This may be a stupid question, but is it possible for a woman to sit in judgment in a Sharia court? Are there female judges or female...
There are no female judges.
There are female lawyers? Then?
Yes, there are female lawyers. They can defend a woman if they want or represent a woman, but they cannot judge on the case because simply they believe that a woman's mind is not good enough, equal to a man to judge in anything.
What do you hope will happen then as a result of this bill?
I hope that they will close all the Sharia courts and ban their activities.
The voice of Diana Nammi, who is the founder of the Iranian and Kurdish women's rights organisation. Well, with me now is Anna Khan, who is a family law specialist, and you advise on Islamic law, don't you, Anna? Good morning. Welcome to the programme.
Good morning.
And Baroness Cox, Caroline Cox, the proposer of the new bill, is also here. Good morning, Caroline.
Good morning.
Now, what convinced you to introduce this bill?
Well, first and foremost, I know many of these ladies, the
ones we've just heard from.
Diana's been talking about, and I've heard their stories, and they are heartbreaking, and I have wept with those ladies. I've also spoken at some conferences, One Law for All, which is deeply opposed to the discrimination inherent in Sharia law. So the bill basically does 2 things. It tries to address a situation which I don't believe is acceptable, where you can have 2 legal systems in one country, our British legal system, the freedoms of democracy, for which many people have died, and a quasi-parallel legal system that's fundamentally incompatible in terms of the second aspect, discrimination, inherent discrimination against women. In this country we have a commitment to equality, and so equality before the law and an incompatible legal system, and women are suffering. That's what made me bring in this bill.
I want to ask you how long you think this has been a problem, because the Sharia councils have been operating for the past 30 years.
I think it's an increasing problem.
When did it start to get worse?
Well, I didn't know when I first began to hear about it. And I heard about it from the women who suffer. So I would say in the last few years, it's got to the system whereby we cannot just condone this happening. It's happening in our country. These women say we came to Britain to get away from this kind of Sharia system. Sometimes it's worse for us here than it was back at home. I can't sit in Parliament and let that go on. Now I know about it.
Anna, what's your reaction then to what you heard in that piece, that interview with Diana, and indeed what you've already heard from Caroline?
In my day-to-day practice, I do come across incidents where women want recourse to Sharia law as well as civil law. So when you keep saying, like Diana does, that they don't know about civil law and it's only Sharia that they have recourse to, in my experience, it's a very small minority who don't know their legal rights under English or Scottish law, and they do want both alongside. And that's what I've spent a great deal of my life doing, bridging that gap between both, because I see the crux of the matter being access to justice for women and for men, because men suffer very badly as well with family breakdown. Children suffer, and it's my job to make sure they get a just solution under whichever system can help them. And where English law doesn't meet the need fully, I need to bring in Sharia law.
Right. Why might a woman want to go to a Sharia council?
Number one, it could be children's disputes, because the English courts are so overwhelmed with children's cases. It takes months to get a hearing. It's very expensive. Legal aid is going to be stopped in October for most of the family matters. So it's going to get worse and worse. It's the time bomb that's growing.
Is it free then to go to a Sharia council?
It's about £100 for an admin fee. And it's just recently gone up in one Sharia council to 300, I understand, because of the costs of administration. It's much cheaper and quicker to get that solution mediated rather than go to court. And the English legal system is also encouraging people to mediate first before coming to court.
Before we move on, I think perhaps we need from you, Anna, an explanation of exactly what Sharia law covers in this country, its area of jurisdiction, if you like.
The only jurisdiction that they have is under Islamic law, so they have no enforcement powers under UK law. They cannot have any judgment applied under UK law, so they can advise you, they can mediate. 90% of the applicants are women because they apply for divorces, like the chained Jewish women who can't get a divorce from their husband. They have to go to the Beth Din. For the same reason, about 30 years ago, as a demand from the community the Sharia Council set up, and it's become, as Caroline says, much more busy because of the overwhelming demand because of family breakdowns.
I think, Caroline, you're concerned, aren't you, that there is some sort of, I mean, it's a terrible term, but jurisdiction creep, that the areas covered by Sharia law are becoming wider, yes?
Well, just 2 points there. One is the mediation has had some degree of creep, now taking in matters to do with family when it was only meant to be financial matters of contract. But secondly, there's been a creep in terms of the enormous growth, because, of course, we have an enlarging Muslim population, more women who want access. But I must just emphasise, take one example, divorce. So many of the women I've spoken to desperately want divorce. Their husbands have already divorced them. Divorce is easy for the man. The woman has to get husband's permission and also to pay. If he doesn't give permission and doesn't give her the money, then she's trapped. Many of those husbands go and get another wife. They bring them back to this country under Islamic marriage. The woman can't get a divorce under Islamic marriage, and so she's left with lost her husband, maybe lost her children. The husband may then get another wife, bring that wife back, and that discrimination
Anna, go on.
really causes suffering.
I must come in here because Diana's made this awful point as well, that women are completely without rights. And I think it destroys the argument for change. I believe there should be change and there should be constructive criticism, and you should encourage every forum that's for law in this country to behave under best practice. But to start writing off all the good work they do, and the testimonials from women that I've seen that are glowing, thanking them for the good work they do, means that they take a defensive stance.
Well, okay.
I need to persuade them,
Caroline,
to correct
do you
their
acknowledge that
mistakes.
Sharia courts, Sharia tribunals, councils do any good work?
Well, they may, but I'm concerned about the women who suffer and really suffer in this country. They should not be suffering, and it's an inherently discriminatory system. One of the functions of the bill is to try to make sure that every Muslim woman does know her rights. It's going to be a statutory obligation in the bill for authorities such as social workers, police, health visitors, to make sure these women do know their rights. And I do actually disagree with you.
I do welcome that. We must make sure women
Anna,
know their rights.
you didn't think there were very many women who didn't know their rights?
I think it's a minority. I totally disagree that there is a majority of women unheard out there, because they do come to me to say that I want an Islamic divorce as well as a civil one. And when they come to me to do that, I have to look at the practice very closely of the Sharia councils and make sure they're doing it correctly. Now, the vast majority, they do have the right to a divorce, which is called a fasq divorce, which is divorce given on the grounds of bad behavior from the husband.
Yeah.
You do not have to pay for that. The only thing they're confusing it with is if the woman wants a divorce without any ground whatsoever, she's just fed up with him, she needs to give back the financial settlement he's given her.
Well,
that's all it is.
Anna, can I just put a specific point made in that interview with Diana Nammi? Diana said that domestic violence, indeed even rape, is allowed in Islamic marriage and therefore isn't grounds for divorce
That
under
is
Sharia law.
Completely wrong. And if anyone is doing that, I want to meet those people. I want to hear these women's stories so I can make sure they have clear knowledge of their legal rights. They must not put up with this, because this is pre-Islamic, to allow pre-Islamic values that Islam tried to eradicate. And 1400 years ago, Islam said women keep their own property, they keep their own earnings, they have an equal part in the marriage. But to have this because of cultural norms of certain people dispensing Sharia, apparently. And also the other point is, it seems to be, Diana's talking about Shia law, which is 10% of Muslims in this world.
Sunni Muslims
yeah,
would
talking about millions of temporary marriages. That may happen to some Shia women, but that's a tiny percentage of the women in this country.
I just want to bring Caroline back in.
Thank you very much. The Council of Fiqh, which is a very well-respected international council for Muslim theology, the latest decree on that, A, does not recognise such a thing as domestic violence. It says that this is entirely within the rights of the husband. So I would say that the traditional orthodox teaching and the fatwa just came out, the ruling came out 2 years ago, still endorses this inherent discrimination. And very briefly, I would disagree. The women I speak to say that many men in countries such as Afghanistan, Pakistan, go and choose women who do not speak English. When they come here, they don't speak English, so they're trapped in their homes. They don't know access to the English legal system.
So we need to do something about the Home Office just validating these marriages. Don't we need to just sort out the problem that's
Anna,
happening?
Does it ever occur that the weight of a woman's evidence is given, that the woman's evidence is given half the weight of a man's?
Only in commercial disputes.
Only. So you admit it happens?
In commercial disputes, the
What's
reason
your
what the
definition
Quran
of a commercial
says,
dispute?
Any partnership dispute or where you've fallen out in commerce, the Quran says
And
that for the woman, that's a completely different thing. The woman has to be corroborated by another woman in case she can't remember all the details of the commercial contract, because 1400 years ago...
Do you believe that's acceptable?
I don't think so. So now, of course, we should be making our own British Sharia according to our rules. There are things in Sharia that are not even recognised under English law. For example, no-fault-based divorce, which family lawyers have been calling for decades. In England, you still have to wait a year before you can file for a petition for a divorce, and then you have to prove fault.
All right.
Why?
So you'd make the point that no system is perfect.
No.
Well, of course
and
not.
there are many complainants about English law.
Very briefly, Caroline, what do you say to people who might say to you that your bill is, frankly, anti-Islamic?
The bill doesn't mention Sharia law at all. It is anti-discrimination, and Sharia is essentially discriminatory. That's my concern, and women are suffering, and that's my fundamental concern.
I totally disagree. I think women can gain from knowing their Islamic rights, and they must know Islamic rights and enforce them.
Anna Khan, Caroline Cox, thank you both very much for coming in this morning.
Thank you very much.
If you'd like to take part in the debate, please do email Woman's Hour whenever you like via the website bbc.co.uk/radio4/Woman's Hour. Have a good day, both of you. Thank you very much.